Let me go back to my lecture, which is titled as Is Specialization a Challenge to Integration in Anthropology? My address is my lecture is addressed to the professional anthropologists, but I'm sure some of those some of you who are not from anthropology also would find similar kind of situation. There is no denying the fact that we live in the age of specialization. That's taken for granted. Anthropology is no exception as a discipline. In most Indian universities, specialization begins in the third semester of a master's course. The result of a specialization is often unfortunate. The unfortunate thing is this, that someone who is considered to be a master of anthropology, MA in anthropology, is called master of anthropology. Rarely any one of them can teach any paper which is outside the specialization. And they would not like to teach. And first of all, even if they are asked to teach, sometimes at the undergraduate level, sometimes there's no option but for them to teach papers falling in other subdisciplines, they have a tough time. So this is the unfortunate situation that we are in, and this is what I'm going to address in my lecture broadly. What I'm trying to argue in my lecture is this, that specialization is fine. I'm not arguing against specialization, but specialization without integration is not fine. And this is my view. I'm not sure how many of you agree with this, but I feel that both centrifugal and centripetal forces must be allowed within the discipline to function. But if it is only centrifugal or only centripetal, then it's not going to help the discipline at all. I also argue that specialization is not antithetical to integration. In fact, both can go hand in hand. So in my keynote address delivered on 7th November 2019, and just before actually the pandemic started, at Calcutta, and on the occasion of the celebration of 100 years of anthropology in India, I spoke about the multiple challenges that anthropology was facing regarding integration. I confine myself only to integration. And today I'm taking it up, of course, the specialization issue as well. Indeed, it is challenging to find anthropology as a fully integrated discipline anywhere in the world today. I have some idea about anthropology departments in the US and the European countries. And also through some of them, I came to know a little about anthropology in China as well. So with some confidence, I can say that anthropology is nowhere in the world fully integrated in the sense we expect it to be. The various branches of anthropology in most universities function in silos, as if they exist independently, with little or no conversation with fellow anthropologists working in other branches, which is one of the most unfortunate developments in the evolution of anthropology as a discipline in our country today, as well as outside. That is why I wish to bring the issue of integration back on the table today and suggest how we might create a sync between integration and specialization. The first and foremost challenge to integrating our discipline is recognizing and respecting the subdiscipline called linguistic anthropology. As you perhaps know, linguistic anthropology does not exist anywhere in the country, not even in Northeast India. The only department where a full paper of linguistic anthropology was taught was in my department in Nehu. But when I went for 5 years to Sikkim University, that 4-credit paper was reduced to 2-credit paper, and it was almost, it went out of existence because there was no one to teach. And it's not that I had any training in linguistic anthropology, but I made effort to learn a little bit of linguistics and teach that paper. So, but you know that our region, Northeast India, is a linguistic and cultural hotspot. And we also know for sure that understanding culture in sync with language is always gives much better understanding of culture than without the linguistic dimension. Because language and culture are symbiotically connected with one another. So if you consider the linguistic dimension, your understanding of culture will always be far better than without considering the linguistic dimension. Now, the benefits of considering the linguistic dimension are also huge for physical anthropologists and prehistoric archaeologists, but we have not even tried to explore that potential. Now, if this branch of anthropology, or linguistic anthropology, one of the 4 branches of anthropology, has to be revived, which I think we must revive, we have to think a little out of box. In our department, we experimented with hiring a linguist, proper linguist, to teach linguistic anthropology, but it failed. Anthropological Survey of India hires linguists to assist in anthropological research in anthropological projects run by Anthropological Survey of India, and it has failed miserably there as well. So what do we do? Now, under the situation, we have no option but to look for a linguistic anthropology, because linguistic anthropologists consider language only as a vehicle, as a medium to understand culture better. Linguists don't fit into this scenario, because for linguists to understand the scope and structure of language itself is the ultimate goal of the linguist. For them, culture doesn't exist, or even if it exists, it is peripheral to them. Whereas for us, culture is central, and we are concerned with language only to the extent that it helps us to understand culture better. And now that is not happening anywhere, because there's not a single department in India out of 45 odd anthropology departments in the country. There's not a single department which trains linguistic anthropologists today, where linguistic anthropology is taught as one of the branches, as full-fledged branches. It's not there. So its existence is really in a dire situation. The only hope I see as far as Northeast is concerned is one of my doctoral students who's doing a special training in linguistic anthropology, is a diploma in linguistic anthropology from Harvard University. She's currently in Harvard University doing this special course in linguistic anthropology. So with her coming back to India, there might be some at least beginning of this branch of anthropology. But one of the small things that we could start doing is asking our students, we can always prevail over our students, to collect very simple linguistic data. You don't have to be a linguist to collect linguistic data. Anthropologists can collect a lot of linguistic data, actually. In fact, Andre Bethe was one who always advised anthropologists to collect native words. So if you collect native words and native sentences, it can give you a completely different dimension about what you're studying. And this can also happen in the case of physical anthropologists, in fact. Physical anthropologists have never tried to collect linguistic data. But linguistic data can give them the cultural notions about growth and development, about nutrition, problems of nutrition. What we consider as malnutrition is not culturally malnutrition always. Or undernutrition may not be always considered as culturally undernutrition. And physical abnormalities are given different cultural expressions in our societies. And those understanding those aspects of society would be extremely important if we simply collect very ordinary list of native words and some native sentences. But this is something that we haven't done, and I think it's time that we start doing this. It's useless to keep repeating the fact that a lot of cultural wisdom, I'm not saying the entire cultural wisdom, but a lot of cultural wisdom is embedded in language. Okay, that's why we say that if the language dies, then a lot of cultural wisdom or traditional wisdom also dies from the society. So this is necessary, but and one of the small ways we can start is by asking our students to collect some native words, some native sentences. And when you start collecting more than 10 sentences, then you'll start seeing some kind of pattern in the way the society expresses itself in the languages. Now, the second challenge is about reversing the fading role of prehistoric archaeology, the other branch of anthropology. With Professor D.K. Bhattacharya expiring and followed by Professor Professor Abdullah Ashraf from Guwahati University also following suit in terms of going to the heaven. This branch of anthropology has become really kind of orphaned, in a way orphaned. And we have some young, of course, prehistoric archaeologists, but the ones who were really stalwarts in this branch are all gone now. Now, we have, at least as far as prehistoric archaeology is concerned, its state of affairs is only marginally a shade better than that of linguistic anthropology, in the sense that whereas there is hardly anyone who is trained in prehistoric archaeology in the colleges, we have at least one trained prehistoric archaeologist in most anthropology PG departments of the country. So in the sense it's slightly better, but the hardly countable few, just 2 or 3 departments of anthropology where prehistoric archaeology is a full-fledged branch or where a specialization takes place. So this is the kind of situation that we have. But if this fading branch of anthropology fades completely, then what will happen? What losses can we think of? The first of all, of course, is that our students will stop knowing. They will not learn anything about what our cultures were like in prehistoric times. Okay, they will not even know which of those cultures in contemporary times are connected to those prehistoric ones. So we become totally disconnected with our own prehistory, and the prehistory is not really too far, in fact. Now, how do we integrate this branch of anthropology with anthropology other branches? One of the first things that we need to do is we need to allow this branch to grow. We have for too long stifled this branch from growing. We have not allowed this branch to grow, in fact. And I know that in order that a branch grows, we have to be particularly those of us who belong to physical and cultural streams. We need to show chivalry a little bit. We should allow to give some posts to prehistoric archaeology as well. I'm not asking for linguistic anthropology posts at the moment because there's none. There's no trained linguistic anthropologist. So the post will fall vacant. Will not be filled up. But prehistoric archaeology, then we have lots of prehistoric archaeology trained candidates, and therefore filling up the posts may not be a problem. But social and cultural social and physical anthropologists need to be a little chivalrous. they have been monopolizing or appropriating the posts that have come to the department for too long, and for I think almost unacceptable level. So this first of all, this has to be we have to allow this to grow. Second, which is academic, the first one was administrative. But the second, which is academic, is this, that we have to focus on material culture in order to let this branch of anthropology grow. We understand material culture in a very, very kind of limited sense. I wouldn't say wrong sense, but in a very limited sense. In the sense of some house types, settlement patterns, agricultural tools, etc., etc. That's not really the material culture that we should be studying. There is the material or materiality of anything that you study, whether you study rituals, dances, festivals, rites of passage, or whatever you study in cultural anthropology or physical anthropology. There is a material dimension to it, and we don't look into those material dimensions. Even for rites of passage, for instance, the Brahmin boys are given a sacred thread, right? The thread may have 11 threads or 13 threads or whatever it may be. A sacred thread is given. That thread is the material dimension of the rite of passage. Or I can give you plenty of examples, but what I'm trying to say is that everything that we do has both cultural and material dimension. And we are overlooking the material dimension for too long, and we're ignoring that. As a result, very often our understanding of cultures is inadequate, if not wrong completely. Now, the third challenge is about the tacit, and sometimes it's quite open actually, is a tacit tussle between physical and cultural anthropologists in most departments of the country. Depending on which stream is sending the head, or which stream has the head of the department for how long, that stream has developed more. So we have anthropology departments in the country which are either physical dominant or cultural dominant. But hardly you'll find any department which is balanced, even between these two streams of anthropology. We have by emphasizing on either cultural or physical dimensions or physical branches of anthropology, we have in the process about to threaten the very identity for our discipline as a discipline with 4 branches to a discipline with 2 branches only. We have almost changed our identity from a discipline of 4 branches to a discipline of 2 branches only. This is something really serious, and then we need to look into it. Now, let me also tell you something that you all know about it. How in terms of our academic practice, we even between physical and cultural anthropologies, there is some kind of divergence taking place, or we don't use the same language between these two subdisciplines also. For physical anthropologists, the word is mate. The word mate is for cultural anthropologists a spouse. Okay, spouse for cultural anthropologists is mate for physical anthropologists. Genealogy for cultural anthropologists is pedigree for physical anthropologists. And intermarriage for us, for cultural anthropologists, is admixture for physical anthropologists. Now, when I first came to NEHU and heard about consanguineous marriage, I was really kind of perturbed. How can marriages be consanguineous? Consanguineous means marriage between blood relatives. Now, it took me a couple of years to understand fully that intermarriages, intercaste or intertribal marriages are very often, cross-cousin marriages are consanguineous marriages for physical anthropologists. And the very style the articles and theses are written in physical anthropology and cultural anthropology are different. In cultural social anthropology, we follow usually the style followed in other social sciences. There's an introduction, then there's a kind of discussion on the place and the data, and then we draw certain conclusions, or we may make it purely an argumentative piece of writing. In physical anthropology, they follow what is called Imrad Format. Imrad Format is I for introduction, M stands for materials and method. The next section will be materials and method. R for results. A for and, of course, and D for discussion. This is called Imrad Format, which is followed in sciences, basically. In life sciences and in natural sciences, very often, most of the scholars follow what is called Imrad Format. And our physical anthropologists also do that. So, but most importantly, the dividing line between physical and cultural anthropologists is the use of statistics. In my 40 years long career almost in anthropology, having not examined but having seen through a lot of theses in all disciplines, all subdisciplines, I have not seen a single physical anthropology thesis without a huge dose of statistics, or at least some dendrogram or some students' t-test, or nowadays ANOVAs, etc., are used. In other words, a huge amount of overdose of statistics and very little of contextual interpretation. Very little of contextual interpretation, very little of cultural understanding of why those people have a certain somatotype, why those people have certain extra frequency of certain blood group, etc. There's no kind of cultural interpretation of that. On the other hand, cultural theses are usually they are happy with narratives. At the most, sometimes they may go up to frequency distribution tables, some histogram, or some of the students may also go for linear diagrams, etc. But not really much beyond that. What I'm going to tell you is this: that both of these trends are not good. Overdose of statistics without qualitative content is not good, and similarly, only qualitative description without some data, quantitative data, is not good either. So both these trends need to be arrested, need to be restrained, if we have to really do justice to anthropology as an integrated discipline. And this has been done in the past. Franz Boas could do it. Why can the new generation anthropologists not do it? Now the question that I'm asking is, can specialization and integration go hand in hand? Of course, from the very way the way I have asked this question also has an answer. I believe that is yes, it can go hand in hand. Now, while the integration of anthropology is important because that gives us the unique identity to our discipline, we don't need to sacrifice specialization. Because specialization can also go hand in hand. And what I'm trying to say today is that that we can also integrate specialization with integration. For this, I have talked about two kinds of specializations. One I call somatic specialization, the kind of specialization that we are following today, like physical anthropology, cultural anthropology, prehistoric archaeology, linguistic anthropology, etc. I call this somatic specialization because it has certain certain kind of body-like characteristics of repeating itself, reproducing itself, and also certain is led by certain phases and rules and regulations, etc. The other type of specialization, I call it, is thematic specialization. Thematic specialization is not based on any of these somatic types. So the thematic specializations are something like migration, study on migration, study on nutrition, study on sports, study on food, study on health. These are all thematic specializations. And I'm trying to say that first of all, we need to think of balancing between the two, and bring in thematic specializations right to the door of now the undergraduate program. Because under the new education policy, the undergraduate program is going to be for 4 years. Okay, I know that many universities are not clear what will they do in the 4th year, but 4th year is mostly research and industry attachment, etc., etc. Now, this Delhi University had proposed, as you know, the 4-year undergraduate program way back in 2013, and it was almost through. And then the government changed. New government, NDA government came to power, and they asked Delhi University Vice Chancellor Dinesh Singh to forget about it, and to completely forget about it. And he was not even allowed to make a presentation before the then HRD minister. Now, of course, the same government has brought this 4-year undergraduate program in a big way, and this is going to happen now. And so we have to worry about the 4th year at undergraduate level, because the PG may be only for 1 year for certain subjects or certain courses, and maybe 2 years as well for certain other projects, certain other subjects. So there may be 1 year course, for instance, 1 year MA in migration studies, 1 year MA in food studies, etc. But there may be 2-year MA in anthropology. So that kind of situation is emerging, and what I'm trying to say is that whatever we do, we must give them the core papers. The somatic specializations have to be only limited to the core papers, and the core papers have to be balanced. Balanced in the sense that all the 4 branches of anthropology must be taught as core papers, and we should not do just tokenism that we are doing today. For instance, we have a 2-unit course in linguistic anthropology in the entire master's course. That is tokenism. Then we may have 2 prehistoric archaeology papers, whereas there are 8 others or 10 others which are physical papers or cultural papers. That kind of imbalance is taking place, and that imbalance must be taken care of. And as of today, this imbalance cannot be taken care of immediately, because most of the teachers are recruited under cultural specialization or physical specialization. And there will be issues of allotting classes to them, classes on papers like prehistoric archaeology or linguistic anthropology. So this, unless we rectify the balance in the core papers, we will not be able to integrate all the branches of anthropology. If we continue to follow tokenism like we are doing today, by just giving 1 or 2 papers to the other 2 branches called linguistic anthropology and prehistoric archaeology, they will continue to be in the periphery. And like all peripheral areas, there will be issues of integrating them. And the challenge to integration will be there, will continue to be there, so long as we do not rectify this structurally. in the very structure of the curriculum. So this is something that I have plenty of smaller issues also that I've looked into it, but this is one major issue. I also have an issue with somatic specialization, physical, cultural, prehistory, etc. I've seen. I'll give you example of two anthropologists. Professor Andre Bete, whose specialization was in physical anthropology at master's level, and Professor D.K. Bhattacharjee, whose specialization was in physical anthropology at both master's and PhD levels. And these two have proved themselves to be iconic teachers in their respective branches of, in their respective fields. Professor Andre Bete as a sociologist or social anthropologist, he likes to, among anthropologists, he likes to call himself social anthropologist. Otherwise, he calls himself sociologist only. Or D.K. Bhattacharjee in the field of prehistoric archaeology. Who's better than him in the country? Nobody comes to your mind. These are iconic teachers in the fields which they migrated to, and not the fields in which they specialized in their university days. So if this can happen, well, we have to rethink on the importance of somatic specializations. I can also give you the examples of my teachers' generation, which includes, of course, Professor Annada Bhagabati, Professor Niren Chaudhary, Professor B.K. Roy Berman, Professor Ajit K. Danda, etc. All of them who belong to my teachers' generation, they knew about at least one other subdiscipline other than the one with which they were identified. I think some time back also somebody said, I think Professor Hajarika said how Professor Bhagavati also knew about prehistoric archaeology and physical anthropology. That is really true of their generation. But when you come to my generation, it has already degenerated. You take the example of the first generation of Indian anthropologists, like Ayappan, Professor Ayappan, or N.K. Bose, or D.N. Majumdar. You name them, and they were all-rounders, or well-rounders, like in the language of Professor Hajarika. They were well-rounders. And if you ask me to teach, if the university asks me to teach physical anthropology, I will resign and go, because I will not be able to do justice to my students. Or prehistoric archaeology, the words are so long and so difficult to pronounce, I'll not be able to do justice. Linguistic anthropology, I might try, but I will not be able to really do full justice to that discipline as well. So I have a couple of proposals, one of which I've already said, that to bring a balance in the core subjects, if we are offering 4 core papers of social anthropology, we must also, if the total number of papers to be taught at master's level, the core papers are 16, then we must equally divide it into 4 for all the 4 branches, which sounds impossible at the moment. But unless we do that, integrating our discipline is not going to happen. Now, the other suggestion is, of course, bringing in thematic specialization at the undergraduate level itself, because of the new education policy. Unless we do that, we'll not know what to do for the students in the 4th year. Now, when you have thematic specialization at the undergraduate level, it's difficult to expect that the thematic specializations would be based on the research and publications of faculty members, because of various reasons. It's not because of any lack of competence in them, but because of the way the colleges function. But at the university, the thematic specializations have to be strictly based on the teacher's own research and own publications. There must be demonstrated proof of their specialization in a particular field. And when these are known slowly and slowly, it also becomes easier for students who would like to join anthropology departments to make a choice, to have an informed choice about which department they would like to join. Because they would have developed some interest, some thematic interest at the undergraduate level itself. So that can be further expanded at the master's level, and they would know, okay, this Dibrugarh University specializes on hill plains interaction, etc. Then they can those who are interested in that field will come to this department. So and most importantly, this department will slowly develop its own identity, its own personality, based on proven research and publications of the faculty members of this department. Now we have to start doing this. It's been too long that we've been teaching something and researching on something else, publishing on a particular direction and teaching on a particular some other direction. There's no sync between our teaching and research, teaching and publications, etc. I may have a fantastic paper published, but I never get to talk to my students about that paper, because there's no structural provision made into our university systems. For instance, I would like to speak about the Brill experience of doing this encyclopedia of indigenous religions of Northeast India. I have data on about 24 indigenous religions of Northeast India, about which I would like to speak to my students who are from that background. But I don't get the time, because if I do that, then who will complete my course? Okay. So this is what is happening today, and unless our research and research writing and our teaching, unless there is a sync between them, we will not be able to do good teaching, will not be able to do good writing. Both teaching and writing would be affected because of this. I have I have one more suggestion, which is like this: that for most of us, the aim is today to publish in UGC care listed journals. Now, that has become the new mantra of success, of career progression, etc. Now, you all know that UGC care listed journals, some of them are trash, some of them are good, and even the best journals, some of the very good journals are not listed in UGC care list. In fact, for IQAR report, I was just searching whether the 2 articles I published this year in the European Bulletin of Himalayan Research, which is one of the very high quality journals, but I searched whether it is there in the UGC care list or not. I found just one day before, I found that it's not listed in the UGC care list. So I could not submit my report of 2 good publications in that journal this year because it's not there. And this journal is looked after by 3 best anthropology departments of France, America, and Germany. Because jointly it's done. It rotates among the 3 anthropology departments of Germany, France, and Paris. And that is not included. So this is the situation. And so my suggestion is that whether it is a care listed journal or not, at least for professors, because they don't have to really worry much about the care list, UGC care list. What you need to what you could try and do is Make excellence the virtue of your life. Excellence the virtue and motto of your life. Try and publish in the best journals possible in the world. Try and get your books published by the best publishing houses in the world. When you make that excellence, I'm not saying that you don't publish a book like this once in a while by the university registrar, but that should not be the practice, general practice. The general practice should be to try and publish books by Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press, Amsterdam University Press, or whatever the leading world, Blackwell, etc. You try and do that at your standard of research, your standard of writing, everything will go up automatically. The publishing houses will teach you a lot in the process of publishing, and they will give you hundreds of comments for changing this and changing that, and you'll start to learn and I'll realize how bad English you wrote, or how bad was your expression, or how poor was the standard of your English. That you begin to learn if excellence is the virtue and motto of your life, not UGC care list. So if this is done automatically what happens that if in order to get published in some of the best journals, you cannot confine yourself to physical anthropology or cultural anthropology or prehistoric archaeology, etc. You have to go beyond your subdisciplines, and also sometimes, very often, beyond your discipline of anthropology. You have to know what kind of conversations are taking place in the context of which your article is coming out. What is happening in the field of physics, or what is happening in the field of acoustics, for instance, on what you're writing, if it is related to physics or acoustics or things of that sort. So you will automatically go out of your narrow, comfortable, familiar domains or spaces to the more challenging domains. And when you start to do that and start picking up what kind of conversations take place in those areas, then the quality of your research will automatically go up. For instance, and nowadays I see quite a few publications happening in the field of food. But if you really want a good research on food, a good publication on food, I would look into it. I would expect that article to have the symbolic aspects considered, the aesthetic aspect of food considered, the biochemistry part of it, and also the aspects of solidarity, aspects of symbolism, etc. All these things considered, if not always engaged with, but at least considered in a good article on food, for that matter. So when you try and make that excellence as a virtue, as I said, these things start to happen. Now, when you say that excellence to be made the virtue, we should not only try to be the best in the university. Okay, not trying to be the best in the department, trying to be the best in the university should never be the kind of a goal, because excellence can be scaled up at different levels. It can be even the best in the department, best in the university, but you should always aim to be one of the best internationally. Your research has to be internationally competitive, and you have to think about the whole world as your arena of competition, instead of looking at only your friends and close friends and or known friends, etc. Now, while we do this, I would also like to remind you that we have left many good things about our discipline. For instance, holism was kind of very important for us. We have abandoned holism almost completely. Nobody really talks about holism. Nobody engages in holism or practices holism today. Fieldwork was our forte, in fact. And today the fieldwork has become not only shorter but also sawdier. And I've seen 3 weeks fieldwork, 1 week fieldwork, 3 days fieldwork, like People of India projects. It was 3-day fieldwork for everyone. Now, and these 3 weeks fieldwork also hardly people stay with the people in the field, but they commute from the nearest hotel, nearest inspection bungalow, or nearest guest house, etc. Now that has to stop. Even if you know that many of you may get DA, TA, etc. for field work, that's it. Earning TA and DA should not be your aim. Your aim should be to learn as deep, to engage with the people, to learn from them. And for that, you cannot live in the inspection bungalows or nearby hotels, etc., etc. You have to live with the people. And we have been too kind of relaxed about fieldwork. Rigor of fieldwork has vanished completely. And even if we just revive that rigor of fieldwork, I mean, I cannot, when students ask me how long should the fieldwork continue for PhD, I cannot say that in terms of time frame. It all depends on how well have you done the fieldwork, how actively have you collected your data, how talented are you in terms of collecting data. It depends on so many things. So the real length is not always the reply. One can do, for instance, if you look at the Todas by W.H.R. Rivers, the whole book was written in the fieldwork continuing for about 5 to 6 months, not even full 6 months. And look at the richness of the data that Rivers collected in less than 6 months. It can be very well compared to the book by Malinowski, which was done for about 3 years. Okay, so it's not always the length of the time you spend in the field, but it's how actively you follow, what kind of technique you follow for collecting data, etc. Now, this is something that you need to remember, but by way of conclusion, I'd like to just say a couple of points. One is, of course, that I've been advocating. One is that if you want to have a holistic understanding of the society or the man, let's say, we continue to talk about the man, right? We cannot have the understanding of the man, holistic understanding of the man, if we continue to talk about the biological man, the prehistoric man, the cultural man, or the political man, etc. We have to talk about the human as a whole. And not just humans as a whole, but also humans in relation to the other than human beings, other than human species, which surround human beings. The plants, the animals, the birds, the spirits. There's so many things that surround us, and we in our analysis we never consider them. We do not consider the forces that have a bearing on our living, on our thinking, on our foods, on what we eat, when we sleep. Everything is linked with the other than human world, and we do not consider that any longer in our anthropological studies, and it's time that we kind of recall them in our anthropological studies. That's the reason why I think what has happened to our lakes, to our rivers, to our forests, etc. You know that very well, and how even agricultural production is falling because of lack of pollination or such things like that. The second point I would like to say is this, that when I talk about integration of anthropology or discipline, please do not think that all the four branches have to come together all the time in everything that we engage with. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what is understood when we talk about an integration in anthropology. At any point of time or in any particular context, a physical anthropologist or a cultural anthropologist may choose his own partner, may choose his own theories, own methods that may belong to history or may belong to linguistics, may belong to any other branch of anthropology. And whatever is relevant for a particular context may be picked up by any partner who is engaged in serious research. Even if a cultural anthropologist chooses to partner with, say, a linguist or partner with economists, that should not be considered as dangerous or risky for the discipline, because such a partnership will bring a lot of new things, new ideas, new theories, new methodologies, etc. Now, I must say one last thing, that it's just taking care of our own house is not enough. By taking care of this, whatever I've said so far is basically about housekeeping. How do we take care of something that is within our control? But there is also something that is not within our control, and that is happening. And this is something that I would like to talk about briefly. It's about the external threat to our discipline. And we have some external threats which is happening. And historically also, if you look at what happened when India became independent, anthropology was not one of the favorite subjects for Indian nationalists. Okay, it was considered to be closely associated with colonialism, and therefore it was, in fact, was looked down upon. And that was the reason why many anthropologists introduced themselves as sociologists. They changed their identity because they felt ashamed to call themselves anthropologists. So this is a threat that comes from the state's intervention in academic disciplines. But the other threat is coming from our big brother. Our big brother is sociology. If there are any sociologists here, please bear with me. Big brother is doing like this. These two guys, G.S. Ghure and N.A. Thuti, they were president and secretary of the Anthropological Society of Mumbai for several decades. And G.S. Ghure in particular believed that anthropology is not a separate discipline, so there's no need to establish anthropology departments. He did not allow anthropology departments to be established in the neighborhood, in Maharashtra, in Gujarat, in Rajasthan, and when anthropology universities started establishing new departments, anthropology was not allowed by these two guys. And this is written by no one but M. Shah, who is also a sociologist. I'm talking, the source is from a sociologist only. M. Shah has written about how these two guys stopped anthropology from growing in the western part of India. Okay. Now this is one. You go to JNU, there is one post for anthropologists. Professor Ravindra Jain held that post for very long. Now my friend Nilika Malhotra does it. Now an anthropologist is appointed there, one anthropologist, only to teach anthropological theories and a paper called Family and Kinship. There is no other kind of role in JNU, but they continue to call it, that we have anthropology as well. I don't know how many of you have read a recent critique of anthropology by two persons, two of our sociologist friends, both from Delhi University. One is by Virginius Khaka, whereas he should have criticized KISS, K-I-S-S, which is linked with our World Anthropological Congress. He criticized the discipline. Anthropology Degrading Tribal People. That was the kind of title of his paper, published in Caravan, in that magazine called Caravan. And the other one is Satish Deshpande, who also, his only qualification to be an anthropologist is that he taught a course, anthropological course, in Chicago University in one semester, way back in 1990s, I think. And in his entry in the International Encyclopedia of Anthropology, he considers anthropology as a very small, minor area of research, not even proper discipline. Okay, and this is an International Encyclopedia of Anthropology, okay, in which on Indian anthropology, the entry is written by Satish Deshpande. Have you ever heard of Satish Deshpande in the field of anthropology? He is not an anthropologist. He has taught one paper in Chicago University, anthropology department. That's his qualification. But to criticize disciplines without being qualified to do so, if Professor Ramin Kaur tomorrow, writes about anthropology, or if I criticize anthropology, well, it's justified, but not by someone who is not in the field, who is not practicing in that area. So one of the reasons why, and you all know that we have about 900 universities in the country today, and 46,000 colleges. Out of 900 universities, at least sociology is there in at least about 400 of them, whereas anthropology is there confined to about 45. It has not really increased, 45, 46. Now, anthropology comparatively is a very small discipline, of course, in India. And this is not really an issue. The issue is, for me, the lack of clear division of labor between anthropology and sociology in India. And probably because of this lack of division of labor, that we are suffering. Anthropology as a discipline is suffering. Let me briefly talk about this. And this is my last point, so please bear with me for another few minutes, though it's lunchtime already. This, say, in the West, I'm not that it happens consistently. In the West also there are transgressions always happening every now and then. The exceptions are there everywhere. The exceptions are there in India as well. But what in the West, normally they study, sociologists study their own societies, whereas anthropologists study the marginalized cultures, other societies. Sociologists study, their main focus is industrial or post-industrial societies, whereas our anthropological interest is in tribal studies or migrant studies or refugee studies, etc. Sociologists, for them, the main methodology is survey-related methods, whereas anthropologists use in the West mostly ethnographic methods for their research. Now, in India, when you come to India, there is no distinction between what the sociologists do and what the anthropologists do. There is no distinction at all. I've seen sociologists doing the same thing as we do, and perhaps from their perspective, we do the same thing as sociologists do. So because of this lack of boundary, or lack of, I'm not saying that the boundaries should be rigid and not flexible. The boundaries can be flexible, but there has to be a boundary, and we don't have a boundary in India. And in my kind of thinking, this is one of the reasons why we have emerged as a minor subject, and they have emerged as the big brother. So consider this situation and think of how this can be countered. One final word is this, that about when we talk about stereotyping anthropology, I mean, not we, but sociologists and others keep stereotyping us. They consider anthropology as equivalent to tribal studies, whereas we don't argue back and say that, persons like N.K. Bose or Iravati Karve have done throughout their life studies not on tribes really, but on castes and pageant societies. And we don't really argue, we don't have that kind of broad-based study reading to be able to argue back. Well, we are continuously bashed with this theory that anthropology was a product of the colonial rule in India. Which subject is not? Let me ask you, which subject is not? And that anthropology was linked with colonial rule is only partially true. It's only partially true. The historian called Rowan, or this person called I forgot his name, Roger Owen. He has come out with a fantastic article where this colonial anthropology and colonial linkage theory is debunked, in fact, to a large extent. And if you read Adam Cooper's book or Talal Asad's writings on this linkage between anthropology and colonialism, you'll realize how fake that blame is on. But that is a stigma attached to us. Somehow that stigma continues to exist. But because we have not done proper research to counter that stigma. Okay, with this, I would like to call upon the younger anthropologists to really do proper research and come out with not just countering this anthropology and colonialism linkage, or anthropology and tribal studies linkage, etc., but also come out with a counter narrative about anthropology. And one counter narrative could be that we may have come from the West along with the colonial rule, like many other disciplines have come, sociology not excluded. While we may have come from the West, our discipline has been nourished for more than 100 years now, nourished by studies based on villages, castes, tribes across the country. So whereas we may be of foreign origin, but we have been brought up, we have been nourished by studies based on our own Indian soil. So that aspect, that of coming from West but being being brought up and nourished by Indian soil, is something that can produce a counter narrative to some of the dominant discourses on anthropology. So I leave that for the younger anthropologists to look into it, and if they're convinced about this, they should pursue this issue while they are doing the regular teaching, and also other aspects of their anthropological pursuits. So with these words, let me thank the audience for listening to me, hopefully attentively. I didn't see anyone dozing off, but thank you for your time and energy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful lecture. Sir has rightly pointed out some of the key and valid points that the discipline of anthropology is currently facing. Sir has incorporated both the administrative as well as academic challenges faced by anthropology as a whole. He spoke about the importance of linguistic dimension that is required to understand the cultural perspective of a society in a better way. He expressed his concern about the non-existence of linguistic anthropology nowadays in many universities. He urged to record and collect some of the native words and sentences of a community that can provide a different dimension to what we are studying. He also expressed his great concern about the fading away of the specialization prehistoric archaeology. He urged that we need to have a balance to integrate the subject anthropology, and to this, the curriculum needs to be structured. And to the question that specialization and can specialization and integration go hand in hand? He answered, yes, specialization and integration can go hand in hand. He also makes mention of some of these stalwarts who were all-rounder as well as well-rounder. He urged for incorporating the thematic specialization, at least at the university level, and the sync between teaching and research must be brought. Holism and field work. He also expressed his concern about the holism, which is rarely practiced nowadays, and field works that are being shortened nowadays. He expressed his concern about the threats coming from disciplines like sociology, but as a whole, humans and those surrounding humans must be considered as a whole by the anthropologist. Thank you so much, sir, once again for your thought-provoking presentation. Your lecture is very much appropriate and suitable to the current scenario that the discipline of anthropology is facing. Now, can I request Moana Bhagavati, daughter of Professor A.C. Bhagavati, sir, to speak a few words, who has joined us virtually?
Yes. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you so much. First of all, I must express on behalf of my mother, who is Mrs. Purnima Bhagavati, who is present, who is online, and I think it's amazing that this is probably the first time she's been on Google Meet. So on her behalf, on behalf of my brother, Nirmal Kumar Bhagavati, who is in Washington, DC, my daughter, who's been flitting in and out of this meeting in between her university classes, my husband, who couldn't be present at this meeting, and many members of our extended, beloved family, whom my father loved dearly. So I speak on behalf of this entire family, and I express our deepest gratitude to the Department of Anthropology for taking this initiative, to the administration of Dibrugarh University, to many of you who are present, some of you whom I know very well. I see some of whom you have been Khuras to me. Dada Koilanda is very, very dear to us. And the entire, I think the faculty of the Department of Anthropology, supported very ably by the technical team, which has enabled me to participate in this meeting, myself, my mother, and other members of our family to participate in this meeting from many, many miles away. I wish my deepest gratitude to all of you. And last but not the least, deepest gratitude and appreciation to Professor Subba, whom I have met as I have accompanied my father to many, many seminars and workshops as his daughter and also as an interested social scientist, and probably somewhere on the margin. So I will not take too much time. I do not want to keep you from, many of you would have your stomachs rumbling. I do not want to keep you from your refreshments. However, what I do want to say is that throughout this morning's developments, throughout this morning's events, I have been sort of visualizing my father, and I think I can see a smile on his face and a lot of happiness there, as he would appreciate every word. Well, sometimes I think he would have been abashed, and as he would say in Ahomia, he would say, "Olop besiye kole niki mur bishoye." So he would have been abashed because, as many of you have pointed out, that yes, there was a lot of humility in him. But in Professor Subba's very, very insightful speech, which has also given me a lot of, food for thought. I think my father would have been so appreciative of the fact of what you said, Professor Subba, about, first of all, the holism, about being integrative, about not leaving out the other, and all of which I think subsumes itself in the word which Koilanda used, and that word was that my father was a humanist. And let me just, add a few anecdotes, and I don't have to say anything about the anthropologists, but what Professor Subba said was one of the last lines which you used in your very, very beautiful lecture was that, to be nourished by studies which are based on our own soil. And I'd just like to give an example of certain anecdotes, during our growing up years in Dibrugarh, that where all of us, that is in the family, we were nourished by this anthropologist who was, I think I never realized that my father was an academic or an anthropologist, but I think there was a seamlessness between what went on at home and between what went on at his workplace, because I think he never differentiated between his work and his family. In a sense, this was the integration in him. So it happened that, our days in Dibrugarh were full of walks through the tea garden. Sometimes he would take my brother and me on walks right up to the university. And that entire walk through the tea gardens, we were at one point staying first in Chokidingi and then in Milan Nagar. The entire way would be filled with very interesting tales, not only about, his field visits. So we've had a fair bit of insight about his terms of dealing with people whom he was studying, but not studying as an outsider, but studying very much by living with him. That brings me to the point of what Professor Subba said, that my father's fieldworks took him away for many, many months. And there I must commend my mother, who has always supported, his long absences on work. So his whole approach to anthropology and his whole approach to bringing us up can be summed in one of the lines of Shakespeare, which he repeated so often. He would tell us that in nature's infinite book of secrecy, a little I can read. So this is one line which was forever permeating our conversations, because he wanted us, in another book which I have recently dug out, a book of birds, where he wrote, which he presented to my brother and myself, where he said that this is yet another book to help fix your gaze at things high and lofty, and let the mind soar ever higher. This was a book which he presented to us when we were in Milan Nagar. And but lest I give you the impression that my father was a teacher all the time, no, that was not the case. He was also a man who was so full of fun and frolic that every Sunday, we were taken to the movies, the 2 movie halls in the market area. I do not recollect the names of the movie halls. Ronghar, I think, was one. So every Sunday we were always at the movies. We would be all 4 of us piled into rickshaws, and of course, when we grew a little older, we would get into 2 rickshaws. So our education was not just limited to our school, and of course I didn't study in the college there, and education was not limited to school education, but our education was very, very holistic. And through that, we got an understanding that life, as Professor Subba has mentioned, it is not just about one field, but life is an integration. And it is an integration of our surroundings, whether it is nature, so birds and natural surroundings were very much a part of our conversation. It used to be fun, it used to be rigor, and I'll just give you a little example of the kind of rigor that he tried to institute in us. Every morning when he went to the department, in fact, every evening, he would give us a task, to myself and my brother, who's younger than me. He would give us a task of me to remember names of rather difficult names of countries and their capitals, and he would choose continent-wise. And to my brother, so I still remember, sometimes he would be very harsh on me if I do not remember the name, the capital of Burkina Faso, for instance. Ouagadougou was not an easy name to remember for a youngster. And then to my brother, the entire the geological era, or the names of whales. So this was my father's way of letting us know, and now on reflection, I think this was his way of letting us know that we are all part and parcel of a huge universe, and we are all an integrated part and parcel of this. And this is my greatest tribute to my father, and I'm so happy today that so many of you have actually echoed these sentiments, especially what Kalyanda said, and what Professor Gogoi said, and all through Professor Subba's lecture. This is what was reflective of the discipline of anthropology, which I think through and through, every cell and every nerve and every breath of my father, he breathed anthropology. So what I'm trying to say is that through him, though I'm not a professional anthropologist, through him, I have had an insight, myself and my brother, and of course my mother. We've had an insight into this discipline, which is this fascinating discipline of anthropology. And today, when Professor Subba has pointed out certain concerns, I think my father would be actually feeling and thinking those very concerns. And I think I'm not going to speak any longer, but I would like to end by urging and reiterating every word of what has been said by Professor Subba, and probably urging all the young scholars here. I'm no longer a young scholar, but I'd urge every young scholar here to really take this to heart. And also, when your takeaways from this meeting, or takeaways from who my father has been of 5 and 6 decades. And let me tell you that his interest in anthropology started when he was 20 years old and continued the 6 decades until he was 80. So the fact that we should not differentiate between disciplines, the fact that we should be more integrative, not just about our disciplines, and the fact that we can seamlessly move between our personal and professional lives. This is what probably made my father be, as Professor Gogoi said, towering person, not just because he was a 6-footer, but because I think he was such an integrative and holistic person. And we thank you again for honoring him with this wonderful lecture and this wonderful event today. And I would have really wanted to be physically present there. Unfortunately, because of certain logistics and because of certain travel constraints, I've not been able to, but I have followed each and every each and every part of the planning which has been done. So thank you all very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, madam, for sharing your thoughts and your experiences with respected Professor A.C. Bhagawati, sir. And thank you for gracing the occasion, madam, even though virtually. Now, we have almost come to the end of today's program. I would like to request Dr. Arindita Goswami, Assistant Professor, Department of Anthropology, Dibrugarh University, to deliver the vote of thanks.
A very good afternoon and namaskar to the galaxy of listeners and viewers of the first Annada Charan Bhagabati Memorial Lecture. Respected speaker and eminent academician and anthropologist, Professor T.B. Subba sir, respected former faculty of the Department of Anthropology, Dibrugarh University, and eminent anthropologist, Professor Kaur sir, Professor Sengupta sir, Dr. Kalyan Borua sir, former principal, Naharkotia College, respected head, Department of Anthropology, Dibrugarh University, Professor N.K. Gogoi sir, esteemed faculty members from different departments and centers of Dibrugarh University, as well as different academic institutions in and around Dibrugarh and other places who are present here with us, as well as who have joined us virtually today, numerous distinguished participants who joined us via the Google Meet link, as well as the family members of late Professor Bhagabati sir, Madam Purnima Bhagabati, Madam Moana Bhagabati, my esteemed senior and fellow colleagues, and dear research scholars and student friends. I, Dr. Arindita Goswami, on behalf of the Department of Anthropology, Dibrugarh University, would like to extend my deep gratefulness to the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Dibrugarh University, Professor L.K. Nath sir, for his kind presence today. We always look forward to listening to his words of wisdom and encouragement. I also take the opportunity to express our sincere thanks to the Honorable Registrar, Dibrugarh University, Professor Jiten Hajarika sir, for his gracious presence and motivating speech. I must express our profound thankfulness to the Honorable Speaker of today's event, Professor T.B. Subba sir, for his brilliant speech on the topic, Is Specialization a Threat to Integration in Anthropology? Some Thoughts for Professional Anthropologists. Sir, through your visionary mind, you have made various thoughtful and keen observations for us to ponder for the integration of the different branches of anthropology, which have undoubtedly enriched the first Annada Charan Bhagabati Memorial Lecture. Sir, we the young anthropologists really need to work upon the points that you have remarked very rightly for the successful survival of our discipline with its different branches in an integrated manner that I believe can serve society in the true sense. Thank you so much, sir, for your motivating and insightful deliberation. We have been so much enlightened. We look forward to have you with us again in more of such academic discourses. Thank you, sir. I take the opportunity to sincerely thank Dr. Kalyan Borua, sir, for his brief portrait of late Professor Annada Charan Bhagabati sir's life and contribution, and paying a wonderful homage to the great stalwart of anthropology from our region. Thank you so much, sir. I must take the opportunity to thank and express our deep sense of appreciation to Madam Moana Bhagabati, daughter of late Professor Bhagabati sir, and Madam Purnima Bhagabati, wife of late Professor Bhagabati sir, for joining us today virtually and gracing the occasion. Madam Mona, you have really enlightened us with the various facets of Sir Bhagavati's magnanimous life. It has been wonderful to have you with us today. Thank you so much for your support and presence. I take the opportunity to sincerely thank all the distinguished academicians, faculties, and scholars from numerous academic institutions of Dibrugarh as well as other places who have joined us today in this event virtually. We had participants from Sikkim University, Northeastern Hill University, DHSK Kanoi College, Cotton University. I may have missed out the names of many, but I sincerely thank each and every one of you for your kind presence and support. I express profound gratefulness to the eminent anthropologists and former faculty of the Department of Anthropology, Dibrugarh University, respected Kaur sir, respected Professor Sengupta sir. Also the faculties from different departments and centers of Dibrugarh University, various other academic institutions of Dibrugarh and other places for your encouraging presence and participation with us. I offer my sincere thankfulness to Professor Nitul Kumar Gogoi sir, Head, Department of Anthropology, Dibrugarh University, for his active and encouraging involvement and cooperation that has been crucial in making the event a successful one. Thank you so much, sir. I also offer sincere gratefulness to Mr. Karunakar Bora, Technical Officer, Dibrugarh University, for rendering his valuable technical expertise for the event. Thank you so much, Mr. Bora. I extend my warm gratitude to all my senior and fellow colleagues and office staffs of the Department of Anthropology, Dibrugarh University, and all the members of the organizing committee for their cooperative and collective endeavors towards the successful accomplishment of today's event. My warm thankfulness also goes to all our dear research scholars and PG first and third semester students of the Department of Anthropology, Dibrugarh University, for their energetic efforts and presence. Thank you so much, student friends. I may have missed out the names of many who had directly or indirectly supported us for conducting this event so smoothly and successfully. I beg sincere pardon for the unavoidable inconveniences that might have been taken place in the course of the event. And since this is our first step today for commemorating the great life of Professor Bhagabati sir, so I pray for all the blessings and support of all of you so that every year we can commemorate the event in a better way. I wish and pray for everyone's good health, happiness, and safety. Thank you so much, everyone.